Alright, good day everyone. I am recording this lecture video as a reference for our discussion for the third lesson. Note that will be included in the first examination of the second term. And this time we are going to be tackling about the principles of composition or the different artistic principles in which art pieces are also being derived herein. So in this particular discussion, we are going to be talking about the philosophies of composition, wherein enlisted here are the following: balance, rhythm, proportion, scale, emphasis, unity, and variety. So if you hear any, before I continue, if you hear any unnecessary noises in my background, please understand that I'm recording this not in a remote area but from a coffee shop. So you might hear background noises, and if you do, please disregard them and listen closely and carefully to my voice as we are discussing this discussion or this topic. So let's begin. When we talk about principles of composition, these are the principles and elements that are successfully combined. They aid in creating an aesthetically pleasing or interesting work of art. But if we're going to review our past discussions, we have mentioned that aesthetics is the philosophical study of beauty and taste. Now, when we talk about when we talk about principles in composition, these are now the different principles and elements that were combined successfully that gave aid to create something, to create an artwork that is pleasing and interesting. And that's what we call aesthetics. So dili man ta pwede magbugna lang niya, just throw some paint there and it automatically becomes aesthetic. There must be combinations of different elements, no? Different principles, discipline, techniques, and strategies to make it pleasing and to make the artwork more appealing, more interesting, and something that could catch the attention really of our viewers, of our listeners, of our of the subject basically. So let's first talk about balance. So kung mag-isgot ka karon og balance, there are three types of compositional balance. Number one, symmetrical. Number two, asymmetrical, and the radial. Number three, the radial. So if you're going to look at what is symmetric, balance gina siya. Kung asa ang, if you're going to look at this sign, kung mo ni na diri ang tunga, na po diri gina circle. Linear gina siya. Now, kung asymmetric po, not necessarily pareha sa symmetric. Dili siya balance. Okay? Pero nagyapan ang different elements. Kung radial po, all the elements are present and in a particular or in a compositional order. Okay? So, mo na siya ginahisgot o balance. So, makita ni mo nga dili, kung yung tag-balance, dili na siya buot pasabot nga symmetric diretso. It could also be asymmetric. Kung sa tinailan kung asymmetric siya, there should be the presence of all the elements. However, the positioning or the combination is different. And the radial. Okay. So symmetrical is equal to the weight that is found in the composition. Say for example, the Philippine flag is of asymmetrical balance. The red and blue fields are equal in size, and the white triangular is a perfect equilateral triangle. Greek and Roman favored symmetrical balance. Kasi nga, like the Parthenon in Athens, they are composed of 8 equally spaced Doric columns. So, if we're going to look at these examples, the Philippine flag, the Parthenon in Athens, pag mo yung get symmetrical, this is more preferred in the olden times, in the ancient times, and even in the 20th century, late 20th or early 20th century. Kasi nga, it was derived on equal weight composition. Meaning to say, balance gid siya, symmetrically. Balance siya in the sense that if you're going to, say for example, the Philippine flag, if you're going to put red and blue, dapat equal yun na siya with the triangular, with the white triangular that is equilateral to a triangle. So to make it, to make it comprehensive, to make it appealing, say for example, the Parthenon in Athens. I think we have a picture. No. The Parthenon in Athens, 8 pillars bigyan na siya. Doric columns ang tawag na. Pero og ato pong tanaw, pillars gina siya. 8 pillars gina siya para matindog. Tanaw, Parthenon is still very much here in the modern times, right? So that's what we call symmetric. Another, the Vitruvian Man, originally known as very long, Le proporzioni del corpo umano secondo Vitruvio or the proportions of the human body according to Vitruvius. So, kung mag-isgot ang proportions sa lawas sa tao, mo man ni siya, right? Put your side arms at the side, your body, and then if you can see here, what makes this symmetric is that it is, or the illustration of man here, right, is enclosed in the box that is also enclosed by the circle. Kita ninyo? Kadi ganing slant nga pagtaas siya kamot o pagbilang ka sa tiil, maigo siya sa circle. However, kung naka-straight na siya nga gipalutay sa kilid, maigo po siya sa square. So this is an example, no, of a symmetric illustration of the proportions of the human body. So we have here the hands, the arms, the shoulders, right, the chest, the upper body, the thigh, the legs, the knees, and the foot, and etc. etc. So that's how they illustrated, or that's how they presented, no, the Vitruvian man, or the proportions of the human body. Okay. Asymmetrical naman is one half of the composition that does not mirror the other. Say for example, this flower arrangement, or most commonly known as the ikebana. This is, if tanawan na to siya, this is a scalene triangle with three unequal sides. Tanawan mo, wala siya symmetric. Ani, kasi nga, dali mas labong, this dali kagmay. So, yung mo symmetric, this will be very plain. Nga, kalinya gid ang pot diha, and then ang kanakon sa flowers is pareha gid karaka. So, this flower arrangement, or asymmetrical composition of balance now is more common to us kasi nga, mas open na ta to the beauty of seeing asymmetrical compositions or asymmetrical balance. Say for example, parehaning illustration or painting, right? Or kanisha a Sunday afternoon on the island of La Grande Jatte by 1884 by George Seurat. Dili man po siya symmetrical tanan. However, it is a very famous painting kasi nga it mirrors the subject comprehensively with regards to that balance. Okay? Or Claude Monet's Still Life and Apples and Grapes from 1880. Try to check the balance. It's asymmetrical. Dili man siya ingon nga the angle is the table yun nga kanang rectangle. It's more siya nasa kilid sa table yang subject. So it's an example of asymmetrical balance. Radial balance, on the other hand, is essentially another type of symmetry that suggests movement from the center of the composition to the outer edge and vice versa. So magsugod ka diri to the center of the composition to the outer edge. Right? Or vice versa. Sugod ka sa outer edge, mahuman ka sa inner composition of it. So that is what we call radial. Isutag radial, patuyok yun siya, like a radius. So the idea is derived from there. So pag may kita radial balance, the point there is that the movement is suggested to begin from the center of the composition all the way to the outer edges, or vice versa, all the way to the outer edges, going to the center of the composition. Another, okay, for example, the Tibetan mandala of the six Chakravartins. So, kita ninyo diri, this is a radial symmetry. So, which is gawas, and then of course you can also see the center composition. Another is rhythm. So rhythm class is recurring motifs and designs separated by intervals. And what are these intervals? This could be regular or symmetric, like the Parthenon, alternating or different components separated by set intervals, like the Cordillera, weaving, or Yakan textiles. This could also be eccentric, which is irregular, but the beats are still connected with one another, or progressive, when the visual beat moves from fast to slow or slow to fast. Progressive siya ba? Hinay, pas, or pas, hinay. Muna yung pasabot sa progressive. Eccentric naman, irregular siya, pero the beat is still continuing as one. Connected yan with siya. Okay, for example, muna yung pasabot ng Parthenon. This is an example of symmetric 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Dahil po sa pikas, nagungkag na siya, pero 8 po na siya. Panawanin mo, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 pillars in each para mo stay put, or para mo maintain siya, mo sustain siya. So that's an example of the rhythm. Again, kung isutag rhythm, motifs and designs separated by intervals. Motifs and designs, usay motifs sa Parthenon. Right? Na pillars. Usay design niya. And then, also yung intervals niya, regular, alternating, eccentric, or progressive. Okay. In an art composition, pattern and rhythm, also known as repetition, are defined as showing consistency with colors or lines. Rhythm is the continuous use of a motif or the repetitive pattern, may it be in color, lines, or shape. There are many ways to show rhythm in visual arts. It can be done through alternation, radiation, progression, or parallelism. Rhythm is closely related to the principles of geometry. So again, kung isyo tag rhythm rather, this is the continuous use of a motif nga atong karong ginasabot as a repetitive pattern. What are these repetitive patterns? Say, for example, in color, in lines, or in shapes. Kung magbalik-balik ini ang pattern ana kani square, sunod circle, then square, circle, square, circle. That's what we call rhythm, right? Say for example, this one by Hilma of Clint in 1914. Say rhythm ani sir, circle siya tanan. Pero ang color niya, there is black and white. There is naa ang primary color, blue, yellow, red. So, wala na usap ang shape. Wala na usap ang shape, na usap lang ang color. But the colors are still consistent with each other. Sir, ang kalahian lagi ani sir kaya na siya three curves while kani duha lang. So that is still called rhythm, the consistency of it. Kung kani diri nagduha, kani diri naglima, there's also a different interpretation of that. No? So that's what we call the swan. Or the Cordillera weaving from our very own the Philippines. Kita ninyo ang patterns, right? The color pattern. Red, there is a easy kakilid. Color pat, the design here, white embroidery. Then the color scheme. And then ang design po, pareha siya. X, diri diagonal, X na po din diagonal. Same here. So this is what we call rhythm. It's the composition of, and of course, it's showing to us the consistency of colors, lines, shapes, etc., etc. So this is one of the best examples when we talk about rhythm. Okay. Another is proportion. Proportion is the size of one part relative to the other. Di ba mo na, ang ginatawag karon sa angle. Ay, wala ka na angle. Pati yung angle. It's not really just about the angle. It's also about the proportion of the subject and the entirety of the subject or the imagery that you're trying to depict. Say, for example, on this part, what can you see here? There is despair, longingness for the lady to go back to her house or trying to get away from her house and she's looking back. You can have that interpretation, but try to look at the proportion. In order for you to have that kind of interpretation, you must first understand what could possibly be the narration. What could possibly be the story here? Say, for example, the lady is wanting or yearning to go back to the house. So makita nimo that there is the barn house, then there is the main house here, etc., etc. And then the fields. So siya ginatawag na proportion, the size of one part relative to the other. Of course, given, mas dako ni siya nga part, but it is still relative to this particular part or piece of the subject, which gives us a possible interpretation and narration. Okay? Proportion is a measurement of the size and quantity of elements within a composition. Say, for example, this is a very good example of proportion. Unsa kadaka ang si Christ, unsa kadaka si Mother Mary, ang sinina nila. Those are proportions that take still the sizes that take part of the entirety of the imagery, right? Unsa ang gidepict ani, because this is just a statue. Iba siya drawing. They're a statue, right? So unsa kadaka proportions of the Christ, the interpretation of it, proportions of facial expressions, ang sinina, the room, etc., etc. Now, let's proceed to another principle of composition. Here is scale. Scale now is talking about the size of a component in relation to what we consider normal. Kung kaya ganun na, proportion is size of one part relative to the other. Ganito, it is the size of a component that is relative to what we consider as the normal. Say for example, the Statue of Liberty in Manhattan, you're very famous, very identical nga statue. Pag muhisgot na karon og scale class, of course we cannot say that this is a normal imagery of a person, but we can say that this is an imagery of a person that has been, amplified, ipadako lang siya to also see the relation of the particular imagery to what is being depicted here. Okay? Another is emphasis. So another principle of composition here is emphasis. So when you talk about emphasis, this is actually creating one of more focal points in a work, stressing what's the most important in a work. Say, for example, elements of composition are commonly used group of aspects to create emphasis in a work of art. So, since it is a combination of different aspects, emphasis now is trying to present kung ano talaga ang focal point sa isang artwork. Sabi nga, creating one of more focal points in a work, stressing what's the most important in a particular work of art. Emphasis can also be done when you isolate an area through color, value, or texture. Now, there are many compositional techniques to create emphasis, including the rule of space, the rule of odds, and the rule of thirds. Let's try to see if we have an example here. So, if we are trying to create an emphasis with using color, so makita nimo diri consistent, parihang colors. But if you look at this particular imagery, color green, siya ra may nalahi. So basically, this is emphasized out of all the shapes and colors kasi nga, maura may nalahi sa iya. So again, when we talk about emphasis, it is creating one more focal point in a work, stressing what is most important in that particular work. So in case of this shape, kaning duha parehas sa shape, no? Parang rectangular tapos triangular. Pero if you look at this particular building or particular shape, it is different. So it is now being emphasized. So all of these are emphasized in a particular artwork. It's just that there is now a more important piece or a stressing of a more important piece in the artwork. Say for example, using the shape, size, and dominance. Of course, makita mo in this particular imagery, mas mag-emphasize gini mo ni siya. Not only because it is black, but it is also bigger for isolation. Kani tanan gatapok ang shape, kani diri galahi lahi pa ang color, galahi ang karakter, or contrast. Pareho silang duha, lahi ang color pero mas dako siya. So asay ma-emphasize di mo na, it's either kani mo ma-emphasize kasi nga it's bigger, or kani mo ma-emphasize because the color is brighter, or the detail. Kani duha very plain. However, this looks more of a house compared to the two other. So the details here are precise. May bintana, may chimney, ato, may bricks, etc., etc. So therefore, when we talk about emphasis, this is the compositional techniques, no, that create emphasis with the inclusion of space, odds, or thirds. Hence, therefore, emphasis now are the composition that are commonly used as group of aspects that create emphasis in a work of art. Okay, example. Francisco de Hoya y Lucientes, the 3rd of May, oil and canvas, the Prado Museum in Madrid. This image is in public domain. So if we are going to look at the imagery, makita nimo nga pare-pareha lang halos ang colors, pare-pareha lang halos ang hues or whatnot. Pero you can see that there is this individual here, the subject here, that is clearly depicting na they were all caught or they were all cornered and then isuko sila. They surrendered, however, ipagpatay gyapon. So there are different emphasizes or emphasis that is being depicted here. The gun pointing at them, the dead persons or the dead people, the people that are scared, and this particular individual right here, this subject right here that is raising his hands, showing that he or she is surrendering kasi nga nakaluhod. So that is now trying to showcase emphasis into that particular artwork. Okay? So, muna siya ginaingon nga, unsay nahitabo sa giyera, unsay nahitabo sa ilang revolusyon, na na-corner sila. So, basically, this is representing what is being depicted. Now, another is unity and variety. Coherence in a work or makes the elements stick together. Unity happens when all the elements work together to form a coherent whole, while variety, on the other hand, is the shape and life of art. Again, unity kapag all the elements take note work together to form a coherent whole, while variety is the spice and life of art. Okay. Breaking the monotony of visual beads, such as the rosary beads with different colors. This is the unity here. Kani iyang kaning linya. consistency. There's a big bead, and then there's a different. The variety now shows the difference in colors, sizes, etc. Again, ulitin ko, the unity in this example class is ang pagkakasunod-sunod ng rosary beads. Okay? Again, as I've said, unity, all the elements together form a coherent whole. Pagkakasunod-sunod ng beads, and of course the crucifix that presents the Holy Rosary. The pieces of this particular whole are coherent enough to present the bigger whole, the bigger picture. The variety here is the difference in sizes, in colors, as well as the shape, the design, etc. But then again, there is still unity in the there is variety in the unity of this particular imagery. No, the spices and life of art, variety siya, mga lamas-lamas. Well, unity is how the different elements work together to form a particular or a coherent whole with one another. Lahi-lahi man siya, lahi sizes and beads, lahi design, lahi of imagery. Pero they are being combined together to form a coherent whole, which in this case is the Holy Rosary. Ang ilang pagkalahi-lahi is what we call the variety. Okay? So, with that being said, these are the different principles of composition. So I hope that you were able to jot down the gist, the very important notions or lessons that we are going to be able to understand better our understanding of the different principles of composition. So if you want to go back to the discussion, just go back to this lecture video, or if you have any clarifications or further confusions that you would like to shed light, just let me know so that we can always schedule, if possible, make up plans if this would not work out. But if this is going to be effective already, kakaya na mo, kasabot na mo sa lesson, then see you on the exam, exam 3. Thank you so much for listening. God bless and happy holidays.